as I was saying, that with the creation of this Loss and Damage Forum, we're trying to create a collaborative platform for all local and global actors to share their resources, and with a prime focus to connect the global to the local in order to address the losses and damages. And we do this through creating of a searchable a repository or an archive of all losses and damages resources by collecting stories, documentaries, articles, and blogs from all the members that we have from the forum. And also the Loss and Damage Forum is basically centered around the discussion and serves as a unified workspace for peer-to-peer learning process. And this online platform will lay foundation for a collaborative community of practitioners, which is spread across local to national to global level, and to ultimately increase awareness and build capacities in order to lead to an informed policy at the global level for loss and damage. So with that, now our main topic of discussion in this particular session is that we have about 75 forum members, both organizational as well as individuals. And one of our organizational members, as well as our sponsor, is HEX EPR, who is previously formerly known as Bread for All. And now we'll hear from a specialist at HEX called Ivan Maillard-Ardenti of the latest climate lawsuit that is made in Switzerland on a carbon major, and how the forum can help to support this kind of intervention. So Ivan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nusrat. Can you hear me well? Is it okay? I hope you can hear me well. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I would like to share. Thank you, Nusrat, for this introduction. And yes, I'm working for a Swiss-based organization called HEX EPR. It is the Swiss Church Aid. We have Protestant roots, but we work with groups from different faiths in different countries. Yeah, let me first try to describe what we are on the climate issue as the head of the climate justice team at HEX EPR. And first, I would like to describe what we are doing in Switzerland. Well, what kind of advocacy work in Switzerland we do. We advocate, we lobby the Swiss government on climate mitigation, but also on climate finance and loss and damage. As you may know, the Switzerland is below expectations regarding climate finance. It is not delivering the amount of money it should provide, and we are advocating the government to increase the amount of climate finance. And of course, on LND, Switzerland unfortunately was not proactive, was not constructive in the discussions until last year. Luckily, it was possible, despite the opposition of Switzerland, to have a breakthrough decision on this loss and damage finance facility. So also would like to congratulate ICCCAD and the entire team of ICCCAD and all the other people who were actively involved in lobbying the different governments in Egypt last year. What we do is advocacy work linked with local organizations based in Bangladesh and Indonesia, because we want exactly to do what Nusrat said at the beginning, connect local to global. We need local evidence, local research findings in order to be in a position to lobby our government and our parliamentarians in Switzerland. And this is why we work with excellent organizations in Bangladesh, with two organizations. One is ICCCAD, that you know very well, a research and advocacy organization. And the second one is CPRD, a smaller organization that is doing also research and advocacy work in Bangladesh. The third partner is the oldest environmental protection NGO in Indonesia, which is called WALHI. It's a Friend of the Earth Indonesia. And with them, we work on this climate lawsuit. Let me say a few words on this climate lawsuits. It was a big breakthrough we achieved. We are quite proud about this project because it is the first climate litigation that is launched worldwide, asking for compensation of loss and damage by a private sector actor, by a company. And this lawsuit targets Holcim, which is the biggest carbon major based in Switzerland and also the biggest cement producer in the world. So there were a couple of lawsuits targeting oil and gas companies or coal companies, but this is now the, let's say, the first lawsuit against a cement producer, which are the companies on the second row on among the carbon majors. The first row would be coal, oil and gas companies, and the second row would be all the cement producers, because they also have very large emissions. And then the plaintiffs are 4 Indonesian islanders. They are fishermen and fisherwomen, and live on a small island close to Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia. And they ask basically 3 things from Holcim. The first one is compensation for their loss and damage because of very strong floods, and when the floods become stronger and stronger every year, they face damage on their houses because the floods will come until their houses. They also ask from the company protection measures for their island, which are mangroves around the island and stone walls in order to stop and break the waves and the floods. And I think the most important demand they have is a strong reduction of CO2 emission of Holcim in order to avoid future harm on this island. And of course, Holcim is voluntarily trying to reduce its emissions, but very slowly until 2030. And these islanders, these plaintiffs are asking for stronger reduction path from the company. And I think in the discussion on loss and damage, we now widely discuss the responsibility of countries, which country should pay for loss and damage, which country is responsible, but we don't speak a lot about which company and which carbon major should pay for compensation of loss and damage. And this is exactly the question that this lawsuit is asking to a Swiss court. It will be the first time a Swiss court will have to answer this question. And of course, we look very much forward to hear the answer of the judge. It will be, of course, difficult in Switzerland because we are not known to have very progressive judges, at least in the first instance. But of course, we will appeal. If the plaintiffs agree to appeal, we will also support them in their appeals so that they can claim their rights from this company and so that they can win this case against Holcim. And of course, the company is reacting in saying that this is not a legal problem, but a political problem. So they say it's not the role of courts to decide what kind of compensation companies should give. And of course, we have another opinion, and we think that climate change and compensation of loss and damage should not be left outside the courts, and all the courts worldwide, and especially in countries that host big carbon majors like Switzerland, these courts should give their opinion about the violated rights of many people in the south, and especially the rights of the 4 Indonesian islanders that are now suing this company. So, and this is in our way to connect local to global, local violations of rights because of climate change, human-induced, human-caused climate change, and what kind of responsibility a global carbon major has in this particular case. So thank you very much for inviting me here, and I look forward to discussing more with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ivan. That is indeed a very brave initiative, and we will definitely try to support you in this fight as much as we can in order to gain the climate justice that is much required. So the next speaker we have is Ronak Jahan Khan Ronon, who is a community representative from the northern part of Bangladesh in Netrokona. And he has recently worked with another of our forum members, Dawa, on a study on non-economic loss and damage, or what we're terming as value-based approach on loss and damage. So we will hear from him about his work and how the forum can help him achieve his goals. So over to you, Ronan.
Thank you very much, Nusrat Apu. So good evening, everybody from Bangladesh. I'm really very glad today to get this opportunity to talk something here. So as already Nusrat Apu mentioned it, that I'm from central northern part of Bangladesh, which is Netrokona district. So I'm in that part. Most of the people are actually dependent on the agriculture, as my family. So my father is a farmer. So I saw that how much he values the farming and agriculture. So even though I saw my father experienced last year the continuous raining at the street 2 week, and it was the harvesting time of the main crops in Bangladesh. So because of the rain, he saw we experienced that our yield was destroyed and our rices start rotting. So like my father values the agriculture most. So, there are lots of people in my area, and different person have the different values. They value different things. So our research was actually non-economic loss and damage, and it was value based. And that's why we went to the people. I talked with my people, and we found that different people have the different effect of climate change because they value different things. So and also when we went there and we started talking with the people, they were they were very open to discuss their personal stories, traumas, and stuff and suffering. So when we started, like for example, when we talked with a person who was actually situated in Gaukandi Union, which village, which experienced a severe flash flood in 2020, and he lost his house completely, and he was talking about his sense of home when he used to talk with the people when, all the day long. He used to mix with the people and roam around the village, but when he goes back to his home, he doesn't feel like that he's in his home, because feels like he's now a nomad person. Like this, we also talked with so many women, because we find out the women are mostly affected, and they also value lots of non-economic things like the culture and the religion. We talked with the women who was talking about the pita culture, which is a very traditional culture of Bangladesh, and she was talking about that now the practicing of making pita has decreased a lot because of the temperature rising. Now she cannot actually she cannot produce coconuts or the cow milk like before. So practice of making pita has decreased a lot. And also we saw that Hindu community has more they are more close to nature. All the worship has connected to the nature, like flowers and fruits. So one Hindu woman was talking about that now she cannot actually use lots of fruits or flowers in puja, which is kind of worship of them. And because of the temperature rise and drought in this area, and also these things also affecting the society as well, because lots of people are displacing because of the riverbank erosion. And when they moved out from that place, the other community member feel like that they are strengthened and their bonding in this community and the power in this community is decreasing a lot. So this sort of we feel like that this sort of stories needs to be needs to get more exposure. And most of the time we feel like it's very hard to express their emotions, their sentiments in words. So if we can use any visual method, like digital method, like videos and photo stories, that would be more effective way to to show and spread their sentiments to the other people. So we also started doing a video documentary on that, on this story. So we got actually very good a response from the people. They're very open and they really wanted to be heard by the other people, because they feel like that whatever the experiencing, their trauma, their suffering needs to be heard from other level also, and other actors. So we definitely we have had these stories of the losses and damages and stuff, but still in the local level we have also the different success stories. So if I just given one example, that there is one village which is called Kamarkali, which is just next to the Someshwari River, and Someshwari River has a exposure to the climate extreme like flood flash, and this river is breaking a lot. So in that Kamarkali villages, when they felt like that they have to move from this place because of the riverbank erosion. So because for their existence they had to do something. What they started, they formed a committee together. They started collecting the bamboo from the villagers, and all the villagers get together and they work together to protect their embankment by placing the bamboo poles, but they cannot actually keep them. It was also washed away. Then they started collecting the bags, and they fill the sand bags with the sands, and they put it in the embankment. But still, when they cannot keep it, and it was also washed away, the youth people from the area was started posting on social media, Facebook. They sang, and also they posted the song in the Facebook, and they grabbed the attention of the other stakeholders from the area. After sharing all this information, the other school students from the schools, teachers from the school, NGOs, people started coming to there. And finally, they formed a human chain. They protested for their existence. And finally, the government actually went there and supported them by the provided by the embankment. So there is also this sort of stories in each and every corner of Bangladesh, where local people are actually fighting for their existence, for their adaptation. So these sort of stories also we need more exposure. I feel like being a resident or citizen of that area, this is my society, this is my community. So on behalf of my society, on behalf of my community, I have that responsibility to share these sort of stories to the other level. And I believe this Loss and Damage Forum is a meaningful platform, also powerful medium for me to share my stories, where I believe that I can bring my stories from local level to global level, because I saw there are so many people here from the other level. So thank you very much Loss and Damage Forum and the other people here for listening to me. I'm really glad. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Ronan. Stories from the ground is extremely powerful tool in order to make actually proactive action at the global level. And Ronan is one of our individual members who's extremely well connected in different parts of Bangladesh. So thank you for that. And we hope to gain more and more evidence and knowledge from your end as well. So next we move on to the next feature of the forum, which we call lived experience. So here we basically the main aim of this particular feature is to collect stories from the front lines in order to strengthen the evidence based on the impacts that is actually happening on the ground. So for that, I would now like to invite Hevanik Henry, who has collated a story for our forum, as well as the project under the Voices from the Front Line on impacts of losses and damage in St. Lucia. So Hevanik, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Nusrat. And first of all, let me thank, of course, the organizers, of course, ICCCAD, for continuing to keep that loss and damage messaging. Of course, coming from a small island developing state, you would imagine that is quite an important issue to us. And I think beyond that as well, but looking at it from the developing country standpoint, the issue of loss and damage, we saw last year with the whole funding. And now that we're trying to get money into that fund, this year, how important that is. And yes, like you said, of course, coming in from the Caribbean island of St. Lucia, though miles away, I often tend to say that the impact of climate change sort of unifies us as developing countries, which is why collaborative efforts are needed if we are going to sort of build resilience, which is a perfect example of why the loss and damage forum, I think, is critical at this time in sharing that knowledge, sharing that experiences, that best practices, which can allow us to support our peer-to-peer learning across regions, even if we're miles away. So again, I want to first of all commend ICCCAD in that regard. Yes, like you said, in terms of coming from a small and developing state, our issues are quite similar. You know, I want to focus a bit on a sovereign village in the island of St. Lucia called Labre, predominantly a very efficient village, but also very vulnerable. I usually say due to three main reasons: due to our location, our size, and economic factor. Location in terms of the island is located within a hurricane belt. You know, so I did not see much more on this given the current climate, with the impacts of climate change, and how that is a constant threat to us every year during the months of June to November, which is considered the hurricane season. In terms of size, of course, we're a very small island, so you can imagine there is not much room to sort of, how do you call it, evacuate, because one impact will have ripple effect on other communities, and we've seen this in the small community. And of course, the economic sectors which we depend on for our survival are quite vulnerable sectors, whether it be tourism, agriculture, and fishing, like I would have mentioned. As you can imagine, these sectors tend to be easily affected by the climate crisis. Agriculture, of course, we know in the changing weather systems, increasing droughts, which we do experience here as well. That can affect the agriculture system, fishing, which I'll go in a bit further on, and of course, tourism, which is the bread and butter, like we say, of our economy. We can understand with, for example, rising sea levels, the bleaching of our coral reefs, items which make our tourism product unique or valuable. They are under threat due to the climate crisis. And that is why it is becoming of a great concern for us. And you use that example, we always say in that lab in the southern village that where we could walk on the beach, we can no longer, as the sea has literally taken over. I mean, in the image you can see on the screen there, this is only from this year. And I can tell you where the boats were a couple of years ago, we probably would have been able to walk there. But that is no longer the case. And you can imagine these little vessels. I don't think they can withstand much more. It's hard to say. From a category to storms, we tend to get very often. You know, they're left to the mercies of these disasters. So indefinitely, we've seen this sort of difficulty, how we've had to adjust. And if we just focus on that sector, for example, the coastal sector, where, you know, just speaking to the fishermen recently, and what they would say is that they've had to find ways, again, with the lack of, you know, this expert knowledge, like science-based evidence, they would explore different avenues, you know, and the good thing is that they are getting a bit of technical support in helping their adaptation efforts. Because again, if not, we just would not be able to sustain the enterprise. So for example, they've adopted what you call fish aggregating devices. Yes, that can be also controversial as well. But it does help them to sort of adjust in terms of being able to secure catch that could keep the socioeconomic aspect going on. Of course, we know there are challenges with that. I'm not going into that at this point in time. But on the other hand, what they're saying now is that with the increase in storms, these FADs, as it's commonly called, which have been deployed into the ocean, the storms take it away. You know, the stronger waves and so on threaten it. So it's like what they've had to do to sort of adapt to it. It's not sustainable at this time. It's also threatened. So that is why this continuous call to help sort of build resilience, and also how can help them recover. So one of the main issues which we were highlighting is the fact that they're unable to get sufficient insurance coverage for their vessels. So you can imagine after the storms or floods and so on, it's difficult for them to sort of restart. You have to start from zero. Of course, you can understand the logic from an insurance company's perspective, why they may not want to sort of insure these vessels. But it also begs the question as to, can we look at various developing insurance facilities within this whole loss and damage scheme that would allow these fisher folk, as we say, to sort of be able to tap into that could help them with their response measure, their recovery measures, sorry. That is a question. So similarly, we have an example where locally, just on a tangent, where for the agriculture sector, there's an insurance facility which takes into account storms and so on that would allow farmers to be able to faster hasten their recovery efforts. So the question now is, can we replicate something similar within the country, or even on a sub-regional basis that would be beneficial for the fisher folk? So these are sort of angles we're looking at. But in terms of, yes, so fast tracking their recovery, one of the things which we see not only in the village but in other villages as well is the use of what they call cooperatives. So, for example, within the Labre village, we have what we call the Labre Fishers and Consumers Cooperative, which allows that sort of linking the local to the global. whereby that cooperative registered institution they have the ability to access funding, whether it be from state agencies, regional agencies, and so on, international agencies. And then in the event of disasters, like we've seen in various recent times, like a name, and you can probably have a look at it on your own in terms of Hurricane Thomas, which is one of the most devastating storms to decimate our island predominantly. Of course, causing damage near 43%. And you may say 43% of GDP is relatively nothing, but for a small island with a GDP of less than $2 billion US, then $2 billion US, sorry, you can understand the significant damage it's caused. So of course, agencies like that will be able to sort of channel the funding to help these fisherfolk get back on their feet back up. They really commend that, but of course, there is a need to further support in terms of ensuring that that cooperative can remain sustainable and continue to be able to respond with lightning rapidity, like we say, when disaster strikes. Because the point is, we know disaster is going to strike. There's no question about it. So it is good to see that. That's why I like to say that we have existing mechanisms in place which can support in building that resilience. But of course, there's need to further support in seeing how we can ensure these structures, we actually have access to the funding, and then they can actually deploy it in a rapid manner. Because of course, we understand the challenges where there's always a saying that, yes, we have the climate finance available, but then it takes forever to access. How do we get the local man who is continually, who is most affected to benefit from it? And this is why I'm saying that we have practical examples here where this is able to reach them in quick time, like we've seen following Hurricane Thomas, and of course the Christmas Eve drop, which was an eye-opener to many of us. So I just want to say, I know my time is probably ended as well, but from a positive standpoint as well, from the village standpoint, they recognize that there are opportunities to unleash, sort of blue economy aspect, looking at particularly coastal and ocean-based tourism. We've seen that, there was increasing interest in that tourism product, which I mentioned earlier on, tied to the ocean, and seeing how we can develop it sustainably and what assets, what resources we can show and sort of promote in that regard. So there is that focus on seeing how we can develop that sort of fisheries, sustainable fisheries adaptation plan, so that we have a clear idea of how we can protect our sectors whilst also boosting sustainable tourism, boosting other economic activity that will contribute to improving the lives and livelihoods within the village. But I always say from a small and developing state standpoint, I think from a developing country standpoint, wider developing country standpoint, we know we are not the ones responsible for the crisis. But it's hard to say that we have, we all know that we have the ones to sort of bear the responsibility. And like I tend to say, we are in a situation now where our countries are not only in an emergency, but we are literally on life support. And it's a case where we literally need the loss and damage financing that is easily accessible, easily transferable, that will allow our those most affected to build the resilience, those most affected to be able to recover, to allow our economies to continue to thrive and to continue to grow. So once again, I just want to, of course, thank ICCCAD for this initiative, and particularly the timeliness of it, I think is key, to see that we have a loss and damage platform, which developing countries, like I said, we may be far in distance, but our issues due to the climate crisis are similar, and that is why we need collaborative spaces where we can sort of promote, share ideas, and push that agenda. Because that is important when we get to the negotiation phase, to get sure that we get the funding that we need so much. So once again, I want to thank you, and of course, I look forward to the discussion to follow. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jevonik, for that wonderful presentation on the story that you did on, but also reflecting on the needs and how this can feed into the global policies as well. So I agree that photos and videos are a very, very powerful tool to engage people's hearts and willingness to do something proactively. And with that, I would now like to move on to the next part of our Voices from the Frontline, where we're trying to collate a number of video documentaries. And for that, I would like to invite Theo Ormonskeeping to share his experience with the community that faced a massive wildfire in the United States. So Theo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nusrat, and thank you very much for having me here today to speak about this film and what this important initiative can do. Just to set the scene, let me explain. Although I work on loss and damage, on advocacy and outreach with the Loss and Damage Collaboration, I'm actually a filmmaker and an artist, and that's my background. And how I came to work with and collaborate with this community was through making a documentary in the aftermath of this fire. And the campfire, which is the name of the fire, It struck in 2018. And although it was started by faulty power cables from a company called PG&E, it was made much worse by a climate change exacerbated drought, which meant that the fire spread very quickly. It spread in 1 hour, 10 miles, which very quickly led to the town of Paradise, in which this community is based, becoming an urban firestorm, leading to 30,000 people to evacuate. When the fire had finished 20 days later, it started on the 8th of November, it had led to the loss of 85 lives, to more than 18,000 structures, which included homes, schools, hospitals and other infrastructure, and to the total area of 240 square miles being burnt. Whilst the economic loss and damage was totaled at 16.5 billion US dollars, the non-economic loss and damage was just as great, and of course not given an economic value. And it's something that continues today with a recent study which came out at the beginning of this year, highlighting that both psychological impacts like PTSD, anxiety, and trauma continue, whilst other more serious impacts such as cognitive impairment have also resulted from the fire. And why I went to make this initial documentary and have since made the follow-up film in collaboration with Nusrat was because in the aftermath of the fire, a church organization led by the Magalia Community Church started to provide a resource and recovery center to support the survivors of the fire. And they did so as soon as they could get back into the community after the fire. There's always a period of time where people are not allowed back to their homes because of the dangers. So what I wanted to do in this new film was to focus upon what lessons the community had learned, why after 5 years they're still working to support the community, and what they would say decision makers working on loss and damage. What important information, what expertise could they share? And what we found was that 5 years after the fire, people are still living in tents, people are still living in vans, waiting to rebuild their homes, and that several things had continued to impact them: the failure of insurance, the multiplicity of crises, including COVID, the economy, increased cost of living crises had also impacted them. The community has done an incredible job to support survivors and still provides both clothing, food, and other support, but they're finding it increasingly hard to continue that work because it's such a long time since the initial disaster. I won't say too much more about what the community has done because the film will do a much better job of that, but I just wanted to share some thoughts around what I think storytelling can do and why the Loss and Damage Forum is important in sharing these local stories at the global level. I think that storytelling and filmmaking is particularly important because when you're speaking with community members and community members are telling what has happened, they are sharing with you what they think is important. They're helping you to approach a values-based approach to loss and damage. They're also highlighting context-specific intangible losses and damages, things which they, as community members, only know that have been lost in their community, whether it's bits of culture or heritage or other smaller things which are personal. They also, in doing so, it spotlights the expertise and lessons learned by community organizations and exactly why they need to be at the center of decision-making and initiatives to address loss and damage. And it also creates a space that if you show these films in the policy-making space, if you show them in workshops, in side events, where policymakers have to put aside their positions, their negotiating positions, and have a much more human conversation about loss and damage. They can no longer ignore the fact that it is happening or not think of it as on a human level. It can't just be reduced to numbers, to costs, to dollar signs. And lastly, the other thing I think it does, which is important, is it helps to build support at the grassroots level for loss and damage funding and policies. And I think that's particularly important in the global north as we now go to the difficult stage of trying to get funds for the Loss and Damage Fund. And we know that, for example, during COP27, there was an important initiative which came from the grassroots level where a group of Congress men and women signed a letter in support of the Loss and Damage Fund, which was presented to John Kerry. So if films can help to encourage other initiatives like that, I think that would be excellent. I'll pause there because I know I've taken extra time, but thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Theo. So we'll actually like to show a small snippet of the wonderful video documentary that Theo has put together. So yeah.
You see a disaster happen on TV, and unless you're local to it, you have no idea how long and what is involved in the recovery. It goes away from the news. You don't see it anymore. The assumption is those people are okay, but they're not. The need for support, the need for items, the need for a recovery center goes on way longer than anybody could ever imagine. That's true. We don't just recover at the drop of a hat. You can't just give people food or a few items and say, you're on your own, you're going to be okay now. The need is a long-term need, especially after the magnitude of a disaster like we had with the Camp Fire.
So as you can see that these kind of films and documentaries are extremely, extremely powerful. And thank you, Theo, for putting together such a heart-wrenching documentary of how people from the front lines are suffering and what their needs are. So, and hopefully this platform can help give such stories the necessary attention and, be used to design the necessary action at the global level. So with that, we'll now move on next to another feature that the forum will exhibit, which we're calling country profiles. So as you can see, we will be having an interactive map where we'll have country-specific case studies. We have already highlighted some of the case studies that we have posted in the forum, and we are collecting more and more. And if anyone among the forum members are interested, and if they have carried out some needs assessment or some analysis on the country's case studies, so we'll be more than happy to put them in our knowledge repository. So with that, we have today, in order to present some of the country case studies, especially on Burkina Faso, we'd now like to request Edwig Som to discuss the case study that she has done on Burkina Faso. So over to you, Edwig.
Okay. Good afternoon, dear all. I thank you very much for letting me being part of the team. I'm very happy to share my knowledge on climate change, specifically the loss and damage in my country. I would like to know if everybody can hear me because I have internet issue.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share with you the research finding of my team related to loss and damage caused by climate change in Burkina Faso. The first point concerns the impact of climate change in Burkina Faso. We can mention the droughts, floods, warming, and intense wind, decrease in livestock and agricultural yields, leading to food and water scarcity. We have also the flood that caused infrastructure damage, as well as education and health sector. So in the study, we also mentioned some economic and non-economic loss and damages. We are not going to talk about those so I think that I have a little bit time to share some information related to those things with you. As economic impact, loss and damage, we have the loss in income, decrease in yield, and also an increase of cost of production in agricultural sector. We have the loss in educational sector and also the health sector. As non-economic loss and damage, we can mention the conflict and instability in the country, the food insecurity, some diseases that appear during when the temperature is very high in the country, the cultural loss, and also the loss in biodiversity. So we mentioned also in the study, there is some policy gaps in the country. The first policy gaps we can mention is the lack of the forecast and early warning product as communication channel to reach the farmers, specifically the smaller one. And secondly, we have the missing feedback system to make a return on the quality, reliability, and the relevance of the data produced. The risk reduction is not integrated in the comprehensive manner in the country. And also we have the lack of awareness and knowledge on national adaptation policy among the implementers. And based on those research findings, we recommend that to increase the investment in the disease, the DRR, and the increased mechanism in the insurance sector. Also, we have the access to climate information, specifically those related to extreme events in the agricultural sector. We recommend good governance, and also research finding must be more accurate and feed into policy. So these are the main points of our research finding I share with you. And I'm very happy to take part of this team today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edwig. That was a very, very rigorous study that you've done, and a diagnostic that is actually missing from a lot of the countries who are vulnerable to climate change. So I hope we can use this platform to collate as many country profiles so that we can finally build a proper research evidence of what are the countries or national needs and how to address those needs. So with that, we'll move on to the next feature, which is the loss and damage library. So here we try to showcase and gather as many journal articles, blogs, reports, and policy briefs, and other kinds of knowledge products that the members share with us. And for that, I would like to now invite Mimaansha Joshi to talk about the latest infographic she has designed on the mosaic of loss and damage funds. So over to you, Mimaansha.
Thank you so much, Nusrat. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for your kind invitation. Also, very good to see some very thought-provoking experiences that everyone is sharing on the importance of videos, storytelling, and graphics. Thanks also for this opportunity to speak about this loss and damage funding graphic that Dr. Huck and I developed on financing loss and damage. So as you may know, Dr. Huck and I have been acting as this duo for several years, where I've assisted him in translating some of his messages on climate change adaptation, knowledge transfer, capacity building, locally led adaptation into some visually representative materials. And we have done so because we really believe that graphics are important tools to communicate your any kind of complex information in a clear and visually appealing and visually engaging way, especially when it comes to a wide range of data and analysis that we have to deal with. And when Dr. Huck started and I started talking about developing a thought piece on loss and damage finance, I did some research, and I was really surprised to see that so much information that remains on financing in loss and damage so far was very fragmented, or they were articulated mostly in forms of research articles, news articles, or papers only. And I was just really surprised that this very important agenda, which has taken center stage in COP discussions, was kind of lacking this clear and visually informative presence. So we immediately decided to capitalize on this opportunity by structuring the graphic into three main components. You may not be able to see it very well in this slide, but we decided to make sure that we were articulating the topic of loss and damage finance to show the state of the play on loss and damage finance by talking about what has been funded so far, what has the countries, what have the countries pledged and committed so far, and what the second level would be about what could this new fund that we are talking about, that we have agreed on at COP27, what would it look like? So what are the range of possibilities? And mainly, what are the other ideas that we can pull from the broader global discourse that we are having on this topic? And as you may know, the attention span of people usually is about 10 to 15 seconds lately. So I just felt like communicating this kind of information in sort of a graphic format can really make the messages heard loud and clear. So I really feel that, this was this has really sparked some ideas. People are talking about it, sharing it, and has gotten the messages far and wide, especially when, I was doing some of the research and I found a lot of research done on what could the funding mechanism be like. So I was taking and collating all that information and making sure that, instead of people looking into papers and figuring out what to do, it was all like collated and put together in this one infographic where people could just see and say, okay, these are the possibilities that that could collate a loss and damage finance. And so far, this is what the countries have done so far. This is where they've decided to allocate money, and so on and so forth. So having said that, I really feel that presenting any information on loss and damage can be a valuable tool for knowledge management, which the Loss and Damage Forum is doing very beautifully. And the use of graphics in the context of loss and damage can help not just promote understanding and collaboration, but also action on this very important issue. And I think this is like better elaborated so far, right? When Dr. Haq presents his articles in Daily Star or Dhaka Tribune every other week, the information gets disseminated through these platforms and guides the development of different adaptation programs, as well as guides the shaping of the global discourse on any topics related to climate adaptation and loss and damage, and also guides the policies and practices. So I would just like to conclude by saying that Loss and Damage Forum is really uniquely positioned here in hosting this repository of information, whether it be policy briefs, reports, journal articles, and it plays this unique role to really catalyze action on loss and damage. So I encourage all the colleagues here from ICCCAD especially and elsewhere as well to use these really powerful knowledge management tools, be it videos or graphics, to raise awareness, encourage action, and foster collaboration on loss and damage. Over, Nusrat.
Thank you so much, Mimaansha, for that important knowledge piece that you have done on which we have archived in the Loss and Damage Library. And such kind of knowledge products from the different forum members that we have is the way we create a proper evidence base on what are the research that is being done on the loss and damage topic itself. So now we move on to another important feature of the forum, where we try to collect a number of capacity building materials from the members, because as you know that there have been a lot of trainings and workshops and compendiums of studies and everything going on across different regions, and through this forum we try to collect as many capacity building materials and products that we can, and we try to cater to different forms of members, that is from the introductory level to the intermediate and to the final expertise level. So now for that I would like to request our colleague Saifi Iqbal to discuss a little bit on the capacity building materials that we showcase in the forum. Over to you, Saifi.
Thank you very much, Nusrat, and good morning, good evening, all the participants. So I would like to take this opportunity to highlight the importance of the fact section under the Los and Damage Forum, which actually we developed in collaboration with the Los and Damage collaboration. For those actually who are new to the field of loss and damage, this fact sections under the Los and Damage Forum actually serves as an introductory guide. It's basically provides an overview of what actually loss and damage is, how it differs from adaptation, and the various types of loss and damage, the causes and history behind it, and then the role of what Washington International Mechanism, as well as the methodologies used to assess and address it. We are constantly working to update and improve this resource, and I encourage all of you to take a few minutes to review the fact section so that we can update it further and improve these resources. And by collaborating and share your insights, so we can ensure that this fact section under the Los and Damage Forum remains a valuable tool for those seeking to understand and address loss and damage. I also want to tell you about the interactive tool of Los and Damage Forum, which actually was developed by International Center for Climate Change and Development under the project, what is actually called Walk the Walk interactive tool for climate change and SRH education. This tool actually aims to increase understanding of some of the basic interlinkages between climate change and women's sexual and reproductive health amongst university students, actually using storytelling. And also this interactive tool of collection of internal fictional storying basically depicts some of the scenarios which actually currently being faced by women and girls in the southern part of Bangladesh. Most of the content actually was informed by the findings of a research study, which actually was conducted as part of this project. And now I want to tell you about the short courses on loss and damage. Last week, we actually implemented a short course on loss and damage, where our target participants were the faculty member of LUC. LUC is actually the List University Consortium on Climate Change. We covered there several topics like the politics of loss and damage, then loss and damage finance in climate change negotiation, legal and policy response to address loss and damage, the basic nexus between displacement and loss and damage. Sorry. Then we also offered this course only for the young negotiator next month. We are currently in the development stage of this short course. We are getting quite a lot of demand. We are also planning to do this short course in person. So hopefully some of you might be interested in applying and coming for this as well. This, as Professor Hawk always said, that this is going to be a major part of our capacity building program of ICCCAD. So then I would like to mention about the capacity building workshop of our LDC Young Negotiators activities under the Youth and Children Platform Loss and Damage, actually, which was developed in the last year at COP27. This workshop on loss and damage actually is proposed to provide an overview of the negotiating skills and the ways for using these skills to promote national objectives and the LDC group as a whole. The objective is not to enhance individual capacities, but also to strengthen coordination and collaboration among LDCs so that their voice have a bigger collective impact at future global negotiations. The purpose of the courses will be to provide sharing and learning opportunities, and where identified, we build capacity of these negotiators and activities across the loss and damage discussion. And finally, actually, we're also planning to provide some advice to both the junior and senior negotiators from LDC, OCS, ILAC, and Africa group. This activity actually based on organizing some pre-COP workshops such as SB workshop, LDC meeting, EXCOM meeting for the LDC, OCS, and African group. This pre-COP workshop, meanwhile, are to inform new and junior negotiators of the loss and damage issues that will be discussed in the COP, how these workshops also provide an opportunity for networking and for introducing new negotiators to senior negotiators and group focal points. Actually, this type of programs goes a long way in streamlining the negotiation process for vulnerable groups such as LDCs, small and developing states, helping the group to be more effective despite small delegation sizes by dividing and sharing tasks. These workshops also help to build negotiation skills through role playing and practice sessions and post workshops mentoring and networking participants. So these are all about the capacity building offers, which actually ICCCAD is planning to do in the in the next few years. So thank you, Nusrat, over to you.
Thank you, Saifi Bhai, for highlighting such important capacity building materials, and such kind of tools and resources will definitely immensely benefit the Loss and Damage Forum, that is news and events. So over to you, Farah.
Thank you so much, Nusrat. First of all, good evening, everyone from Bangladesh. It's a pleasure to join all of you, and thank you all for joining us. So I'll just be very brief about our news and events feature. But before that, I'd just like to mention that we have heard about so many country evidences and the different ground realities, and that definitely needed a one-stop where we can have all those evidences together and we can build our narrative over it. And this is the place and this is the spot where we can talk about our news feature, because in this feature, you'll get to know about all the recent updates on the loss and damage issues, particularly all of these evidences that are happening around the world about the climate change impact and what are the losses and damages are people facing. In the left-hand side, you can see we talked about two case stories. One is from Vanuatu, like there were very severe cyclone happened on the 1st of March in this year, and it says it accompanied with a severe earthquake and it impacted almost 80% of the people of Vanuatu. And we know about the existence of Vanuatu in the Pacific, which is very much prone to the climate change, sea level rise, and the increasing natural disasters. So this is one of the cases we can reflect on how the incidences and the evidences of loss and damage is actually rising over the different areas in the world. And in the bottom side, you can see it's another case from the southern Malawi, where a severe flooding happened last month, where there were recorded 4 people died and a lot of people were actually left missing. And the disaster management department of southern Malawi mentioned that the damage to the property, to the life were so much that many people left destitute in that area. So these are some of the ground realities, what we see around the world, and this is the place where you can get this updates. Without this ground realities, there are also many updates on the loss and damage fund announcement and what are the different aspects of operationalizing these issues and how the narrative is building up over the time. This all kind of information you can get there. And at the same time, we also have an event chart, what we're saying as a calendar. Every month, we collaborate with the different members and the partners of our Loss and Damage Forum, and we identify the different key milestones. The people like us who are following the loss and damage track, we know that the first transitional committee meeting is going to be held on 27 March of this month. But before that, there are going to be many other important events. Maybe you cannot see it in the slide right now. It's a bit hazy, but if you go to the site, you can see there will be many dissemination event in Malawi. There a symposium is going to happen. And also there will be conference on loss and damage after this transitional meeting at the end of 29th of March. In the same way, going forward in the upcoming months, we are also going to develop similar kind of calendars to let people know about the key milestone and the dates for loss and damage. So this is kind of the brief overview of my presentation, but I'd just like to mention that we are talking about connecting local to the global. We know how the communication tool have been so much powerful even in the last year to actually establish this loss and damage fund. In the similar way, if we want to get and hold on strengthening this global narrative on loss and damage, it is important that we connect to this global and to this ground realities. So with that note, I'd like to say thank you and over to Nusrat. I'll be happy to talk anything later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Farah, for discussing how communication can be an extremely powerful tool to disseminate as much information as we can. And through these news and events portal, we hope to do the same. So with that, I would now like to move on to the main feature of the Lost Image Forum, which will practically connect the local actors to the global actors. And for that, I'd now like to request our colleague, Fawzia Hussain, to discuss a little bit in depth into what the discussion board will entail and how to operate it. So over to you.
Yes, thank you, Nusrat Abu, for giving me the floor. Hello and good evening, everyone. My presentation is going to focus on the discussion forum. It typically works by allowing users to ask questions or start a discussion on a particular topic related to loss and damage. Other users can then respond to the post, providing their own thoughts and opinions on the discussion topic. Users can also upvote or downvote answers based on their perceived helpfulness or accuracy. This helps to surface the most useful or insightful responses to a given question. Loss and Damage Forum also has a system of moderation in place where users can question posts or even answer to them. Moderators then review these reports and may take action such as accepting or removing topics and/or comments and post them. Users on Loss and Damage Forum can follow topics as well as other users they find interesting, which in addition helps to personalize their experience on the platform and surface content that is most relevant to their interest. I'd like to conclude here by saying thank you. I hope this was insightful, and I'd like to ask Nusrat Apu to continue with where I left off.
Thank you, Fawzia, so much. So this discussion board is mainly an online portal which works as discussion board. So if anyone wants to, one of our members, you have to be a member in order to access the forum, the discussion board. So if you are a member, you can post a new discussion topic and then post a question in the discussion board. And based on the question and the relevance of the actors among the forum members, they can then post answers to the question. So this is an easy way of communication, and hopefully this platform will help to facilitate that kind of communication between different actors from local to national to global level. So this is one of the main features that we're hosting at the forum. And with that, that's basically almost towards the end of our discussion today. So our operating procedure, the way we operate is through our members, since it's a collaborative approach and a platform. So our team will send weekly alert to all the forum members in order to share any new resources or knowledge products to be posted. And besides that, we will hold monthly meetings with the forum members who wish to share their work and discuss or plan new areas. And our join us as a member form is live and is active, so that anyone who wishes to join us as a member, be it an organizational member, as you have heard from Ivan at the beginning of our discussion today, that HEX is an organizational member, as well as any individual member can fill up the form, and we'll go through a very easy screening process, and then we'll onboard him or her as a member. And with a joint and collaborative approach, we can together host separate dedicated loss and damage conferences or a loss and damage hub at the COPs that do come, the upcoming COPs. So these kinds of advocacy forums are actually very helpful in order to mobilize action on the global level. So with that, this is basically what our Loss and Damage Forum looks at the moment. It's a beta version, and we're still working on the design. And hopefully, with the forum members we will have more and more resources to updated on a regular basis. So with that, I would like to now thank all of our forum members who have joined us here today to share their work, and would like to open the floor for any kinds of comments or questions. So if anyone has any question, we have the, okay, so I see a hand. Allowed to talk. Yes, Irene, I think you can say. You can ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Tonyigwe Irene. I come from Uganda, and I work with Women for Green Economy Movement Uganda. My question is this platform basically in one country, or it is globally? And if it is globally, how can Ugandans, as you know, we have also faced the challenges of climate change and specifically loss and damage on local communities in our country. I have a live story to tell on loss and damage because I work with vulnerable women in the local communities that have suffered the consequences of loss and damage due to climate change. How can I join the panel to tell the story on loss and damage, and how can we be helped? Because as of now, we are just using the membership fees that we get as an organization to make sure that our communities are aware, are sensitized, and are empowered on how to mitigate the climate change impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. So it's basically a global platform, and it's actually online version of the platform. So one of my colleagues will soon put the website link on the chat so that you can take a look, and you'll see at the very last portion of that website, a tab is called Join Us. So you can click there, and there, as we mentioned here, that we will have the form to join as a member is live, and you can definitely fill up the information that is, regional information, which if you're working at an organization, and, some generic questions, and then we'll go through a basic screening process, and then we will onboard you as a member. And as a member, you have access to all the resources, and also the discussion board towards, the question and answer part of the forum. So yeah, and definitely, as I mentioned, that we'll have monthly meetings with all the forum members. So really looking forward to your application to join us as a member. Anyone else has any question or comments? Okay, yeah, I see another hand. So Mohammed Fahad Rabid. Okay, so maybe we can move to Chinoso Agbo. So if you could ask your question, please.
Yeah, thank you for my name is Chinoso Agbo. I'm the Partner Center for Climate and Environment and Community Development. And then, we are preparing some wide-scale countrywide studies along the lines of what.
I'm sorry, but we're not being able to hear you properly.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so I said my name is Chinoso Agbo, and I'm a lead researcher for Batnon Center for Climate and Environment, Sustainable Development. So we are following the large-scale disaster we recorded last year in country, where we had over 12 states affected by massive flooding, affecting over 40 million people, leading to significant loss of both lives, property, means of livelihood. So we are preparing we're designing an annual study or analysis or impact assessment, if we can call it that, trying to measure the degree of these losses, and then the indirect influence of climate change, its relationship, and then some level of vulnerability assessment as well. So, but my key question is if we have room for collaboration while we are trying to upscale some of these studies, if there's a room for collaboration with your center, if that is possible, then we can let's know the maybe technical experts we can begin to have conversations with along this line, and if possible, we may be able to maybe have a final report that may be presented towards COP28.
Great, thank you so much, Inoso. So please, as I mentioned, that join us as a member, and we're planning to host our next member meeting in by the end of this month, and there we can definitely the purpose of the meetings is for the forum members to come up with ideas in ways we can collaborate with each other. And definitely, as you mentioned, could you repeat which country you're doing the analysis on?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Okay. All right. So yes, definitely we can always try to find out synergies and ways to collaborate. So definitely, please do sign up as a member so that we can share the invite for the member meeting. So thank you. Thank you for showing interest. Anyone else has any questions? Okay, if not, now then I would like to request our director, Dr. Salimul Haq, to give the closing remarks to this session. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Nusrat, and thank you to everybody who joined and participated in this very interesting session. I just want to summarize and reiterate what we hope to achieve with this session. It was to share the opening design of the Loss and Damage Forum, which ICCCAD is going to be hosting going forward. It's not finalized yet. We've just shared some of the features with you today. We invite anybody who's interested in joining to do so. There are two ways in which you can join. You can join as an organization, and you can join as an individual. Both are possible, both are welcome. You need to just fill in the forms for membership, and then we will scrutinize them and accept them in most cases, and you will be welcome to join. Once you have become a member, you are then entitled to share information on yourself as an individual, on your organization and what you're doing, and any publications, videos, photographs, stories that you may have related to loss and damage from climate change. Remember, the topic is loss and damage, not mitigation, not adaptation, not climate finance. It's about loss and damage specifically. And as I'm sure everybody now is well aware, loss and damage is growing very exponentially. In the last few days, as a couple of speakers have already mentioned, the island of Vanuatu got hit by 2 successive hurricanes within a matter of days, and they're still devastated there. Hurricane Freddy in the Indian Ocean traveled to the island of Madagascar, hit Madagascar, crossed Madagascar, and then went and hit the continent of Africa, the countries of Mozambique and Malawi and Zimbabwe. And then normally a hurricane like that, when it hits the land, it dissipates. But this one turned around and it came back into the sea, and it's going to hit those countries again. This is absolutely unheard of. It has never happened before. And that is what we are talking about when we talk about loss and damage from human-induced climate change. We have entered the era of losses and damages from human-induced climate change. And all you have to do is watch your television screens. Every week, you will see something happening somewhere that is a totally unusual, totally unexpected, never happened before weather phenomenon, extreme weather. It can be cold weather, it can be hot weather, it can be wildfires, as we saw the video example that Theo showed us. In fact, right now in Los Angeles, this is the West Coast, California of the United States of America, one of the sunniest, warmest states in the United States of America. They have a snow blizzard warning. Snow blizzard warning. They never get snow, but they have a snow blizzard warning right now. in Los Angeles. So this is now the new normal. The old normal is gone. Everything you used to see is gone. It's now going to be changed, and not for the better. It's going to be for the worse. And so our forum is meant to be co-designed by all the members. Tell us what you want. Tell us what you think we should do. We would be very happy to try and do whatever people think are useful. We've just shown you a few of the features that we have made available already. We encourage everybody to join and participate in continuing to help us design it. It's a work in progress. It's not final, it's not finished. We hope to continue to do this, but we want to make it useful. So the final point I'll make, and the final criteria as far as I'm concerned with my forum, my colleagues who are doing the forum, and you've met a number of them already in this call, in this session, is make it useful. People must find it useful. Otherwise, why should they join? Why should they give time? And so if you have ideas on how to make it useful, we welcome those ideas, and we will try our best to make it useful from your perspective. And so thank you all very much for joining this session. We will be uploading the recording of this session very soon. So please feel free to share the recording with anybody that you think might be interested. Not everybody could join today, although we had a good a number of people joining the session today. We would like more and more people to know about this. So please help us to disseminate and share the fact that this forum now exists, and to encourage people to join it. I'll stop there and let Nusrat close the session for
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, sir. So I see some questions are coming in. So since we're a little short in time, I would encourage all the participants here to join the conference link on the HOVA platform to register for the conference. And there you can post the questions, and we can definitely get back with answers related to the questions. So thank you. Thank you so much.